So up next, we are joined by the Repligen team, Martin Petter, Data Products and Engineering, and Shawn McNamee, Manager of the Data and Business Intelligence. And they will be sharing how they used CData Sync to automate 80% of the data ingestion at Repligen. So take it away, Martin and Shawn.
Thank you.
So, hello from us, and really what we are going to discuss is how we accomplished that feat, and maybe even more a bit about how the choosing of the tool was made and how it all fits up in our background. But first of all, let's introduce ourselves.
So I'm Shawn. I've got about a decade of experience in business intelligence. I head up the BI team at Repligen, kind of came from a sales ops background and went into supporting the company from a whole analytics needs from a whole bunch of other different functional areas. Have an MBA from Northeastern, a bachelor's from Utah State, live in Southern New Hampshire, and yeah, love to camp, love to go skiing. Been excitedly watching the snowfall up north. Martin?
Sure. So I'm responsible for the data products, data architecture, data engineering. So pretty much everything not visible to the end users in Repligen. And among other things, I'm also responsible for how the data is getting there, how we can start doing all this nice business analytics stuff out of it. And I'm actually based in Europe, in Estonia, so it's PA for me at the moment. And in the background, I have worked with multiple companies setting up their data analytics infrastructures, but also creating the business layout around it and figuring out how to get the biggest value out of those data and its usage. So today we are going to discuss a bit on the background on the choosing. So what's the challenge of getting data in? We're going to discuss a bit about why we choose CData, how it compares to maybe other things, other tools, as well as custom coding. And then we're going to present its place in our architecture, and finally end up with a small conclusion on what it means really for the business side. But first of all, Shawn, maybe you would introduce Repligen as a company.
Yeah. So Repligen is a leader in the bioprocessing industry, which is a nice way of saying a lot of the equipment used to make certain types of modern pharmaceuticals. And so we're producing equipment used to make a lot of those things. We're publicly traded on the NASDAQ, and yeah, we use there's a lot of heavy data usage across the company. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So data is at core of everything we're doing. And of course, when we are discussing data, the biggest challenge there is how to get it. Very often, especially smaller companies, start from just pushing everything they have into some analytical platform, be it a BI tool or be it a data warehouse tool, and then start picking up or reasoning what they can get out of it. So that's what we call a pure data lake method usually. But we like to call it in Repligen as a dead weight, meaning if you have a lot of data that most of it you would never use, you would end up with higher cost, you would end up with less performance, and people will start asking, what are we going to get out of it? On the other hand, if you don't have data, you don't have reporting, you don't have analytics, you cannot get any value out of it as well. So that could be one of the biggest kind of challenge points, is how to get just enough data. Now, when people realize that, they often start building their own data engineering teams. So a next usual step is people knowing Python, people knowing maybe some other frameworks that are widespread in data engineering, start building their data pipelines and ingesting everything that's needed. Very often already combining both data onboarding with data modeling and presentation. So that's a classical ETL method. On the other hand, that always takes time, and in pretty much every company I've interfaced with, one of the main complaints has been about data teams, that those are slow, and if I needed report yesterday, I can get it in a month. Another possibility is to go and fetch suitable commercial applications such as CData. Of course, as a caveat, there isn't any solution commercially available that covers all the possibilities. So that's what we are going to explain a bit later on how we manage this differentiation between how to do things commercially, easy, quick, and how to do complicated things. But first of all, let's introduce the CData Sync as a tool.
Right. So CData Sync is great because it has the built-in incremental replication. It lets us know when the data schema changes. So, if a new column is added or something like that. It really has the flexibility to address both cloud and on-prem solutions, which is definitely a selling point for us. And then it really that breadth of connectivity. If you go to their available connectors page, it's got a lot there. And then for us, especially with QuickBooks Desktop, that's not our main ERP system, but as you acquire companies that are scaling up, somehow QuickBooks always seems to make its way in there. And then the cost predictability and the lack of the data tax. I'll let Martin speak to that one.
Yeah, that as well. Before that, I must say from an engineering viewpoint, metadata awareness or metadata-based loading is something that was really critical for us, because in our case, and I think in most of modern enterprises case, all the applications are changing. They are constantly in development, which means the data structures are constantly changing. And nobody wants to wake up in the morning knowing that, hey, there was a release yesterday and we don't have any more data because somebody created a new column or dropped something. So this metadata awareness, meaning the loading itself can figure out what data exists and create data loading accordingly, was extremely critical for us. But related to cost predictability or this no data tax, for us, it means there is no licensing related to how much of the data we have. And we should not worry if we need to reload a bunch of data instead of just carrying out incremental views, because it might cost us too much. So that was another thing that we really loved about CData. But now going to compare between custom built pipelines with CData Sync, then I would say the biggest change is, or the biggest differentiator is probably speed. As I said before, data teams are notoriously slow, especially for the rest of the companies very often. And it takes at least hours, if not days, to build a new pipeline to fetch a new data source, as opposed to CData Sync, when you can just fire up a new connection. It takes a minute or two to configure, and then already choose your data tables you need. So overall, in 5 minutes or maximum 10 minutes, you can get your new data source without any big effort. Then what is also very nice about CData Sync, I would love even more if it would work better, would be able to work around change data capture. That's a method that allows to database declare what has been changed since last data loading and only present the changes. So you would not need to reload gigabytes of data every time you need to have an update. Of course, it's perfectly possible to interface with change data capture with our custom pipeline as well. But here the complexity brings in, because each different data source manages it in a different way, which means if you want to build it by itself, it's very easy to do it wrong. Another thing that CData Sync is delivering to us is built-in monitoring and built-in error handling together with alerting. So if anything goes wrong, we would immediately know about it. And depending on the criticality, we would either immediately react on it or deal with it on the next business day. It's again something you can build in your custom pipelines, but you need additional tools, additional setups, and it drives up complexity and reduces available time. So as a result, what we can see, we automated 80% of our data delivery to Snowflake, that's our data lake platform, using CData Sync. And the rest of 20, we still retained with custom code, mostly because, if I said before, building a new CData Sync connector takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes maximum. But there is a downside. If it takes more, if you're spending hours on it, then it's probably not worth to bother anymore because it's too complex for a commercial tool. And that's where, at least in our experience, is a good time to switch over to custom development, which pretty much takes the same time or effort, but you can get more reliable results. So in our case, 80% standard sources, standard conditions, ability to work with supported platforms is a perfect niche for CData Sync. And the rest of 20%, or let's say 15+%, we're dealing with custom coded ELT tooling. If any questions on which exact we're going to handle, which way, we can discuss it after that event. So maybe a bit positive sides and downsides of CData as a platform. So why we really love it, it just works. We have a virtual machine somewhere. I'm going to discuss it a bit later. And I rarely even have to peek into it. It works there. Out of loading sessions, I think we have CData related error maybe once or twice per year. So it's terribly reliable. We do have more issues, but pretty much more issues are all related to the data sources of the issues with the network. Why we also love is that, as I said already, adding a new data source is human interface driven. It's very fast. It's very easy. You do not need a data engineer to say that, hey, I need that additional Salesforce object, or I need that additional data table from that business application. What we would love CData to work better on is a bit on the operations part. So job log management is something, if it's very important to you, you either build your own tooling on top of CData, which is perfectly possible, or you would look for more options in there. Also, what sometimes has bothered us is the licensing scheme of CData. So yes, we don't have data tax. So we are not licensed by the amount of data we are pushing through, but we do pay license per connection, which is okay if you are loading data from your business applications. But now start thinking about all the SharePoint sites, Smart Sheets, Google Sheets that people are building all over the place. And now you would have to add connections for every location where those sheets might exist. This is something CData has promised us they are going to work with and maybe provide some alternatives, but this is clearly one of the biggest improvements we're also waiting for. And the small nagging at the end, so anybody who has already used CData Sync and anybody who is looking at it, don't get surprised when it comes. When you are switching major upgrades, so like from 2023 to 2024 version, you need to issue a relicense. So jumping between major versions is not so easy. But how CData is presented in our landscape. This is overall our architecture. We call it lakehouse architecture. So it's a combination of data lake and the data warehouse. Why we call it this way is, and why we're very happy with that simplicity of bringing in new data. We usually start data analytics and sometimes even reporting out of the raw data sets. So we do not waste time or spend time on grooming, correcting, modeling all the data sets, because that's usually something that takes days to weeks, sometimes even months if it's very complex. But from a data lake perspective, we are able to deliver first reports, first analysis directly out of the raw data as it exists in the source systems. And we can already show it. We can already make our first business decisions out of it. Then usually we analyze what the data we have brought or onboarded is. We are making the quality controls checks about it. And out of the corrected data, we are then building what we call business data models, which end up in fixed data marts supporting their business reports and dashboards. The sync, how we have built up, it's built on Azure, but we are using our own custom infrastructure, not the prepared Azure virtual machines, mostly because it proved to be easier. And also we are heavily utilizing Azure Virtual Wide Area Network, really support and suggest it to try it out if you can. And in our case, security is paramount. So all the connections through CData as well as outside of CData are always encrypted, at least with SSL. And we are also encrypting all the databases within the CData environment. So out of that, what is our business view? Maybe Shawn, you can introduce that.
Right. So there's a lot of efficiency gains that are gained from the that are taken away from this, especially in light of how lightly staffed our team is. It allows us to stretch out the resources we do have a lot further. You know, our projects get done a lot faster. The you know, the months of developer hours that we don't need to spend to get the data from whatever system it's residing into our data warehouse. And then, you know, fundamentally you get down to you know, what is the central use case of a business intelligence team, which is to, you know, provide a lot of those analytics so that your people who are out on the front lines of different parts of the company, whether in sales or product management, you know, account management, manufacturing, other areas, don't have to go in and pull their own analytics. So you save hours and hours per week for people whose time is pretty valuable. And then there's significant savings on data consumption because it's, you know, we pay by the connection. So there's that lack of a data tax that was referenced earlier. And then this goes into that single pane of glass that we present to our users, which in our case, our data visualization tool is Tableau. So we feed everything into Snowflake, and then, you know, you can give somebody in our company a single user license into Tableau, and they can draw on however much of that infrastructure they need. And, you know, we've been taking the time to add value across different functional areas. So, you know, sales, marketing, manufacturing, human resources, whatever it else may be. And then some examples on our end. Specifically, we were involved in making equipment used to make COVID vaccines, and so at that point, you know, you'd heard about all the supply chain shortages in the news. We weren't immune from that, and so there was a significant amount of overstocking. And using the BI tools that we had, we were able to optimize our inventory after the COVID high wore off, and we were able to, you know, show a 7-figure savings on our inventory cost. And then our forecasting process used to be brutally manual, involved a lot of Excel spreadsheets being sent up to a senior leader who was actually putting that data together manually. That the process was painful. It's significantly more automated now, and now there's much more of a focus on what to do with the forecast and how to you know, move the needle instead of where is the needle pointing us, right? And this centralized CData Sync, Snowflake, and then Tableau infrastructure really gives you that single pane of glass, that single source of truth for analytics across the company. So there's less focus on putting together the reports and more of a focus on how do we use this data and the insights it's given us to drive better decisions and to run our company better.
So that's our input. Any questions, any feedback, any comments? Or is everything clear as a soap.
Thank you so much for going through your insights on this, Martin and Shawn. Really appreciate it. I would love to ask you, I know this is one of the things that came up in your presentation, is how you're handling the 20% of pipelines that are not running. So I'd love to dig into that and the specific processes that you're using for ingest and why you're using those as well.
Mm-hmm. As I said, majority of that is really a custom-made pipelines. So we are mostly using Python-built applications or self-built applications because most of the time, the reason why we couldn't use CData Sync was it was either very complex network environment, so we just need to build different ways on how to get to the data, maybe build some kind of proxies in the way and so on. The other possibility is that there is just no support. We have some exotic, for example, engineering environment. We're heavily using something called SolidWorks PDM. So we are loading all our engineering data into the Snowflake as well. So we can compare it to how it's used, how it's behaving, what kind of issues there are. It's kind of PLM system. The only difference is that it's truly integrated with all the other places that feed data into. And for monitoring management, we are using Apache Airflow, and we are using Sentry from Apache as well.
Okay. Fun. Go ahead.
Shawn, I think that's a question to you.
I see.
Yeah, so we do use Tableau Prep. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, to be honest, because it's nice to give people the ability to create new data sources that give them new insights, but you have to manage and support all of those data sources. So what we've been doing is we've been moving to what I refer to as a shared model. So we try to keep the data source creation and maintenance, which is what Tableau Prep is primarily for, like, doing a lot of the stuff you do in SQL, like your joins and your unions. We're trying to keep the data source maintenance on the BI side of the house, and then we're empowering a select group of users with Tableau Desktop to create their own analytics on top. And we're really trying to force all of the data work back and like all the data source creation either back into Snowflake or on an ad hoc basis on Tableau Prep. But really trying to manage the data sources on the BI side, and then support subject matter experts who we partner with to create their visualizations in Tableau using desktop. And it's kind of an ad hoc process, but the bias is definitely to try to keep that split. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's great.
And
thank you for.
I switch
Sorry,
back to
sorry to
the
cut you off
architecture.
there, Martin. We're
Okay.
unfortunately we're getting close to. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate that you presented here.